Let's start off where I usually start off with these walks and talks. 25 months sober. I take it day by day. And this video is going to be about an interesting topic. I'm going to be talking about bankruptcy and booze. I'm more about bankruptcy than anything else. And I've been through a few things to do with this. So let's get talking about booze and bankruptcy and how this isn't going to be the kind of video that you think it is. So let's start off with bankruptcy. Bankruptcy is one of the most evil financial instruments ever devised by human beings. And you've heard about bankruptcy, but all you've heard about it is that if you do it, there's something bad about it, and that you shouldn't do it. That's not what bankruptcy is. Bankruptcy is a financial tool that allows people who are in debt to just simply walk away from it. And if you're a creditor and you're owed money by a company, they can just declare bankruptcy tomorrow and you might as well prepare for getting nothing. And that is what makes it so dangerous and so evil. And when I say I've been through bankruptcy, I mean I've been through the receiving end of it. Well, I actually haven't been through it all yet because it's still ongoing. But what you need to do is watch some videos from bankruptcy lawyers. And each of the videos, they're the same, which is the bankruptcy lawyer, smiling bankruptcy lawyer going, so you've declared bankruptcy. And now we're going to tell you how to go through the bankruptcy so you don't have to pay off all your debts. With a smile on their face. And they're treating all your creditors, all those you owe money to. These videos just treat them like they're numbers on a spreadsheet. Not even humans. Just numbers that you can get rid of by going through the bankruptcy process. So what the bankruptcy process is changes from country to country. But basically it's a financial instrument that allows the owners of a company to go to court and go, we're bankrupt, assign us a lawyer and an accountant to manage all our financial matters and our creditors. We'll provide the trustee with all the details that they need and all the data they need, and they can sort things out, and we'll just put our feet up and wait for the law to run its course with the bankruptcy, and then we'll wait the amount of time that we have to wait, and then we'll start up another company and go right back to business again. Yeah, so in various countries, when you declare bankruptcy, you can actually go back to being the owner of a company within a period of time. For some countries, it's a couple of months. Other countries, less than a year. Other countries, it's a few years. And here's the thing. You can declare bankruptcy as many times as you want in many different countries. But there might be some stipulations in that each time you go bankrupt, you have to wait a little bit longer before you can start a company again. So if you ever talk to rich people or listen to rich people who've been through a bankruptcy, that they went bankrupt, they'll snap at you and go, you don't know what bankruptcy is. It's just a financial tool to help out people who understand money, and that you use bankruptcy to become profitable again and things like that. And they do. But what they're not telling you is that it's a very selfish way to go about doing business. And you can get a name for yourself, but it seems that doesn't really matter because people in business understand the power of bankruptcy and how it helps wealthy people to stay wealthy. So as an instrument, it's open to a lot of abuses. Now, here's the thing. When I was doing business, a lot of business, and companies owed me money and I chased them up a bit on it, I didn't realize how they could use bankruptcy as an instrument to turn me into a creditor with everybody else, with equal rights to whatever morsels are left over from the bankruptcy. And there's different types of creditors. So the two types of creditors are a secured creditor and an unsecured creditor. Basically, it's like an insured creditor and an uninsured creditor. And the secured creditor, they'll get paid before the unsecured creditor. In my case, I was an unsecured creditor. And I'm guessing a secured creditor requires a little more paperwork when doing business and is the sort of thing that's given to banks and government bodies. And people can declare bankruptcy as well. They can use that as a tool to get out of debt. What you'll find is that there's YouTube channels about how to manage your money. And one of the questions that comes up quite often is, I owe a lot of money, should I declare bankruptcy? And the financial advisor says, no, don't declare bankruptcy. Let's try and deal with your debts. Learn to deal with your debts. It's a much better way of going about doing things. And they're morally and ethically correct. But financially, maybe not so. And really all that's happening is, in their experience, they've realized that bankruptcy has absolutely decimated the landscape in terms of the effects of that bankruptcy on other people. Not necessarily the bankruptcy on the individual who's declaring it or the company that's declaring it. Aye. So I call these ethical financial advisors. They've seen the destruction and how much is owed, and they understand that sometimes we're talking a lot of money being owed to people who are not wealthy, who are maybe even under the average income bracket, people who are broke, and they're working for others, and the others are only paying them a fraction of what they should have paid, and telling them that they'll pay them the rest down the line. And a lot of money can accumulate that way, and a lot of accounting nonsense can go on, unethical stuff, and then the bankruptcy hits, and total amount of the destruction becomes evident in the bankruptcy filings, and you see who's owed what and how much they're owed what, the list of creditors. I did business with somebody who decided to declare bankruptcy a few days into me asking some questions about accounts, and ended up owing me 6 figures, which I've never seen and will never see, most likely. So being a creditor in a bankruptcy, here's another thing as well. You'll see the names of the people working in the company, its managers and even owners will write their names down as being owed money that they haven't paid themselves from the company in the past 7 or 8 months, so they too are creditors and they're owed money. And if you look at the sums that they're owed, it's going to be kind of like half of what they owe everyone else. Yeah. It's such a horror show, financial instrument, and it's simply there because in the past, companies, wealthy companies, rich owners, just wanted a way out to protect themselves from becoming poor by owing lots of money to people and having to pay it up. And that's what bankruptcy is about. It's for them. For the average person, a bankruptcy, you know, you don't pay your bills maybe for 6 months to a year. It's a lot of money. And then you start over again. But like the financial advisor says, it's better to learn how to deal with your debts than go into bankruptcy. And that's the truth. And it's the truth. So I call them the ethical financial advisors. So anyway, I was not fully aware that when you do business and someone declares bankruptcy, that they literally just get to wash their hands off their debts. Now, there are some areas where they could find themselves in a degree of trouble if they declared bankruptcy and did certain things before the bankruptcy, namely using company funds to buy stuff for themselves or give stuff to people they know, things like that, to try and hide away the money, I suppose, before declaring bankruptcy. If they do that and they're found to have done that, they can get into a bit of trouble. But there's ways out of that trouble as well, by giving the stuff back and letting the trustee liquidate the assets to pay back the creditors. So again, type in bankruptcy lawyer and watch some videos about what bankruptcy lawyers are like. And they're just all smiles and, okay, you've declared bankruptcy. Yay! Let's go ahead and set it up so that you don't have to pay a single cent back to any of your creditors. And I can understand why towards the end of the 20th century and the start of the 21st century, we started seeing a lot of these business managers and business owners had to appear before a panel, a tribunal consisting of politicians, legal experts and accountants who are giving them a pop quiz on what happened to the business and where did all the money go. I can understand why there's more and more of these happening, because bankruptcy is just a flip of a switch and somebody's out of debt. Now here's the thing, imagine you or I, we go to the bank and we get a loan. We buy something with the loan and we can't pay it back. So the bank says, look, we're going to have some of your assets taken away from you. We'll sell those, and after we've sold those, your debt with us will be square. That's one way they deal with things. And of course, you can see TV shows about repossession. The repo man comes along, kidnaps your car. But you see all that happening. I should really be laughing because it's no fun. But you get that it's at that level for the average person that owes money. But for big businesses and companies, there's a clear separation between their own personal wealth, their personal assets, and the company assets and the company's wealth and what the company owes. And another thing is, when somebody declares a bankruptcy, often you're told get legal advice right away, and I do actually highly recommend that you find yourself a lawyer who understands bankruptcies. And one of the things they'll tell you is everything is now in the hands of the trustee, and you need to be careful what you say. What does that mean? What they're trying to tell you is don't be asking the business owners for your money back. Don't be contacting the business owners at all. Don't say a single thing to them. Because if you contact a business owner after a bankruptcy, that can be used against you in the bankruptcy proceedings. Again, it depends on the law, so get a lawyer, but it can be. So if you write a nice email saying, hey, if you have the money to pay me back, or at least some of it, I'd really appreciate that. They can use that against you in the bankruptcy proceedings. And the trustee could say, well, this creditor broke the law by asking the company owner who declared bankruptcy for some money. So it's really a cruel tool indeed. Oh, wow. There's a little birdie here. So what's actually happening here? And it's probably come down from one of the bushes over here. The mommies are going to be calling it back to see if it can come back on its own. And it'll do that. The thing is not to touch them. If they're in the wild like this, to leave them alone and let nature handle that. And why? So we let nature take its course. We don't touch the young bird because it needs to learn to fly away whenever anything comes close to it. That could be a predator. There's only one time in which you move them, and that's if there's a high domestic cat population in the area, because domestic cats are not indigenous. They're bred by humans, and you introduce them into an island and they'll decimate the wildlife there. They'll cause extinction events. So it's not really natural selection at that point. It's a type of human intervention involving breeding for a predator that didn't exist there for eons of evolutionary time, until more recently when modern humans introduced the cat into the population. That's the only time you move it. You move the bird up into a bush. And even then, cats. But anyway, I love cats. I love cats. I'm a cat person, but I understand the damage that they can do to wildlife. And here's another thing as well. The trustee who's handling the bankruptcy, they get to put in their own bill at the end of the day with the creditors, and they get paid first. So it's understandable why you have bankruptcy lawyers, because they're like, oh, rubbing their hands, here comes another bankruptcy. So there are other parts of the bankruptcy as well that you need to learn about. These ones are absolutely pure diabolical, which is that businesses, when they sign contracts and agreements with people, sometimes the contracts can contain a clause, and I had one of these contracts, that I could have my financial matters with the company looked into by what's called a forensic accountant, and they would do an audit, and I was allowed to ask for that under certain conditions, and those conditions did arise. Now, a forensic accountant is a bit like the accountants that work for the FBI, and when they raid a business, the forensic accountants take all the documents and all the materials, and they go through everything and go through all the shredded documents and tape them back together and try to discover what's really going on. Only it need not be so violent like that. It can just be an accountant who just goes through things with a fine-tooth comb, and everything might be hunky-dory and fine, no problems at all, but they need that level of magnification on the finances. And there's something very similar to that called an audit. And that's where a company basically has to open up its books, and an auditor comes in, professional accountant who does audits and goes through everything to make sure everything's okay. What's owed is paid and everything's been done above board. And I had these in my contract. And within a few weeks of raising the possibility of needing to do some of these with one of the companies I was doing business with, they declared bankruptcy. Why? Because if you declare bankruptcy, then you don't have to be audited and you don't have to be opening your books to a forensic accountant. Okay? So the creditor can no longer use the leverage of an audit and forensic accounting because the company declares bankruptcy. Instead, the trustee effectively is the auditor and is the forensic accountant. It's the trustee that is going to go through everything. And that's very different from somebody who does business with a company and has a contract, and the company they're doing business with being audited, because often the company that you're doing business with, and it totally depends on the contract, they can end up paying for the audit if it's shown there's a large enough variance in what is owed and what's being paid. And they can also end up paying for the forensic accounting. And all of these are very expensive things. They're not cheap at all. I mean, you're looking at anywhere between $300 an hour and $900 an hour for one of these experts to come in and start doing what they do. So very quickly things can spiral into the tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands. So in order to avoid that bill, butterflies. In order to avoid that bill, they declare bankruptcy, and instead all those costs are on the shoulders of the trustee, and they manage everything. Who's owed money, who's not owed money, etc. So there's that as well. So bankruptcy as a tool in doing business is just one of the most evil inventions ever. Because if we went to a loan shark, let's say, and borrowed money from them, and we couldn't pay them back, sure, we'd be in a bit of trouble, wouldn't we? If we're not paying things back, the loan sharks are gonna send the heavies around to say, hey, you need to pay up, or if you don't pay up, things around your shop are going to start falling to the floor, that sort of thing. So you're probably asking, well, what's that got to do with booze? I tell you, it would drive you to drink. Only I didn't. I was 12 months into my sobriety when a company I was doing business with declared bankruptcy, owing me 6 figures. So sobriety and your daily walk, things come out of the blue and really can knock you for 10, the unexpected, and you have to get through it somehow without turning to drink. And so I'm 25 months sober. The bankruptcy process is still ongoing with that business that owes me money as a creditor. where do I go from here? What are my next moves here? What do I do next? Well, don't drink. That's step one. And from there on in, we'll take it day by day.